Hey guys, Coach Berto here. As many of you guys know, 2017 was a contest prep year for me. However, what a lot of you guys don't know is that this is something that I set myself up for somewhere in the middle of 2016. So what I'm here to tell you guys is that if you're planning on competing in 2018 and you're planning on using Team 3DMJ as your coaching service, that you better get a hold of us now. This is to ensure that you are in the right position to maximize your prep, both in regards to the effectiveness of the prep, so that we can not just be effective, but also educate along the way, and so that we can have fun. So don't be one of those people who get a hold of us in January and it's a situation that we just have to turn down. The time is now, folks. You will not regret it. You will be glad that you thought of this and set yourself up for success ahead of time.
Hi 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez and you're listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. Today I'm joined by Alberto Nunez and Jeff Alberts as we talk about how to plan your year. Since this is the very first episode of 2018, we wanted to try to provide some frameworks for those who are competing and for those who simply just care about their strength and physique development over time. The first part of this episode will go over the way we create structure for our bodybuilders prepping to get on stage this upcoming year. We discuss what the optimal start of the season looks like, how we create a long-term view, and where we should be by the year's end. And then the second portion would be for people who are not competing this year because either they're in between bodybuilding seasons or maybe people that just simply care a lot about measuring their progress in and out of the gym and want to ensure that this is all working in the right way. So whatever stage of your bodybuilding career, we hope that you find this episode useful to lay out your own personal foundation for 2018 and perhaps 2019 as well. So let's get into it. As usual, if you have any other feedback or comments on this episode, go to 3dmusclejourney.com and leave it under podcast number 76, or go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/team3dmj and leave it there. Here is how to plan your year with Jeff Alberts and Alberto Nunez. In our meeting yesterday, we had a team meeting. In our meeting yesterday, Bert, you were saying you had a lot of goals. You didn't talk about your bodybuilding goals, but you had like life goals in general. Like you were thinking about the new year ahead. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are you thinking
definitely
about? What in your life are you like gonna do when you return from your Christmas vacation?
Hey, pressure's on, right? Okay.
Yeah, everyone's gonna talk shit on Instagram if you don't do this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think for starters, I just got a few like simple needs that keep me happy, and I want to prioritize those because when I get those in order, everything else gets taken care of. So for example, one day you have your day set up that I'm like, man, I should do that because I've done it before. It just happens that way, where I train first, do all like my, I guess, post 5 p.m. stuff for most people early in the day, and then when it is time to sit down and work, and whether it be create programs, work with my athletes, or just create something, learn something that's going to be useful to me, I'm just in a way better place because all my stuff was taken care of. So I think that's a big one for me, to kind of reverse that, because I don't think I've ever done it that way. Not as an adult, maybe when I was like a much more like erratic, like early 20 something. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a huge step for me. And I know there's going to be some resistance there for sure. And I think the big step is you have to plan it, lay it all out, give my, that one goal, macros, right? And then execute, which is always the hardest part for most people.
Are you talking about macro goals? Is that what you meant? The big goals?
No, like a detailed plan, there's someone else eating.
I was like your protein intake and your fat, we're talking.
But be that detailed, like break it down, like whatever the goal might be. And it might seem like something simple, but I think it's going to make me much more effective at other things that I do.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a big one for me, to just kind of lay that foundation so that all the other stuff that I want to get accomplished I think it's just gonna make for a better environment, I feel.
Right. Okay. Since we're on that, I guess, Jeff, you're in 2018. Do you see it that way? Do you see it as like new year? This is a
No,
new way. No, you
I'm
just continue.
well. I've seen 46 years, so they start the dates start to get really blended. But I don't like, oh, January 1st is rolling around, so okay, here's the New Year's resolutions. It's more just, let's just try to keep going what I always do, just stay consistent. But I think I do want to like write down and list out, like starting with the big picture goal of 2018, like family goals, bodybuilding goals, coaching goals, those type of things. Because once I have the big picture in place, then it's easier to kind of fill in the dots, the details.
Yeah.
So that's something like I'm taking a week off at work next week. So that's something I want to do, is sit down and actually write out like some type of game plan. I have in my mind what I want to do, but I want to get it on paper.
Okay. Got it. Do you mind sharing what's on your mind?
Family goals is just to basically continue being happy, because I've never been happier.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
so that's the main thing. But like there's like certain things that we do here at home that I would like to see like get better, like the way we do things as far as structure. So just really fine tuning that, because usually when I have family life in order, the bodybuilding, the coaching, all that stuff, it's a little bit easier to execute when things are. So more stress at home, more stress that just kind of goes elsewhere, and then vice versa. I want to make sure that my coaching is in order, and that's what I like to do that's why I take a week off, is like I usually spend a little time to kind of say, okay, what worked well during the year, what really didn't, and I try to fine tune those things so I can better my processes.
Okay. So sorry to interrupt you, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that just when I get those things in order, it just it blends elsewhere. It just really kind of makes things flow a lot easier. Yeah. There's a lot of things that, like in this year, there's a lot of challenges that kind of came up that wasn't planned, and it really kind of threw things for a loop. So it was hard to balance my energy out, like for different things, like energy for coaching, energy for family, energy for training, energy for prep. Because there was a lot of other things that I didn't account for, that just snuck up on me. So if I can, because those things are always going to happen to us in life. There's always going to be something that happens. So I want to make sure that the things I do have control over, I can really like streamline those and make them efficient. So that way, when the things unexpected happen, it's not as like, whoa, shit, Yeah.
Okay. So, Bert, there's a few things that you're like, because this is a new year, it's an opportunity to make these shifts. And then like Jeff, you're like, I got it all pretty much figured out, but over time there's little holes in the plan, and you just want to like tweak them and make sure it's like.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, the ending of the year for me, it's always like an assessment period. Like I'll look back, because everyone at some point, like around September, October, they're like, holy shit, it's September already, right? And
it's when pumpkin spice hits and everyone loses it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
and peppermint mocha.
It's a good time to start to definitely like examine what have you done this year. Like, is it everything you told yourself you were going to do? And for me, that's no different. It's like it turns into 2018. I'm like, all right, so this is what we did. This is what I didn't do. Let's make this next year better. So like I think the calendar for me does it's like it kind of tells me where I'm at, right? And what I have done. So I will definitely use it as a landmark and kind of reassess things, and definitely pat myself in the back for the progress I made, but then also acknowledge the fact that there's some things I said I would do that did not get done. And I think I'd say about 99% of people can definitely say that when they reflect 2017. So
well, I got a big one that I didn't do. That's oof.
Can you talk about that? What'd you not do?
I didn't get on stage like I wanted to and compete.
That's useful.
That's right.
That's useful though.
I felt like I failed, because it's like, here I am, this veteran, and I usually have my shit together, but just didn't work out. And So it's a kind of like Bert was saying, it's a learning experience, because now like I want to really improve that and actually get on stage in 2018.
But at the same time, you're like, but my family life's the best it's ever been.
There's
it's like
pros,
always the
pros and
trade-off.
cons. There's pros. Like there's what I did really find value in is that I finally can maintain a body weight where I'm happy with, where visually I like the way it looks, but also I feel good. Whereas in the past, coming from preps to then transitioning to an off season, it was always like an on-off switch. Like once the shows are over, it was a recovery diet. And it was like recovered to the point where I'm 30 pounds overweight and out of shape. And then it puts me so far out of whack that when I do go to prep again, now I got to go through this long 10-month process again. So the whole time, this whole prep it ended up being like a good thing, because now I picked up and learned new behaviors that carried over into where I'm at now, where I could actually manage my body weight a lot easier, a lot more efficiently.
But that's good for people to hear, like that. 30 whatever years into it, you made a really big learning jump this year.
Oh yeah,
like because everyone thinks that they're so stuck, and as soon as their newbie gains stop, like a year and a half in, they're like, oh my god, it's everything's over, I've hit my peak. Or it's like, seriously,
I can't progress anymore. I'm 28.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, unlike y'all though, you guys know this about me, but I do feel fresh starty at the new year, but I feel that it's not because it's the new year, it's because holiday, like anytime life gets really busy or I have a big life event or a travel event, anything that messed up my workflow for like 3+ days or 3 or more days, I come home and I have to have like at least that long to myself to do the reassessment. And mine usually is written. It's usually by myself. It's usually in like notebooks all over this damn place. But I agree with y'all like that. So I just can't go that long. I know a lot of people prefer the year because they like that big look, but I need it's no more than like a couple months. I think that I would go without one of those periods. And I don't know why I need that, but so the new year feels new, but I don't know. I guess I just, maybe because I don't have a season per se as an athlete the way I used to also. That, because I know we're talking about life in general, but we're going to go athletically as well. But that's just how I roll in all areas. But as an athlete, I haven't assessed since I started training for Grid 2 years ago. And it was like, I just need to get good enough. And I've spent literally like 2 years and I feel like I'm almost there. So until I was first starting with 3DMJ and first found the Grid League and first got my coach, once that all happened, I don't question anything. It's been pretty easy. So you guys would have a lot more to offer in this conversation. So can we do that? Athletic? Oh, go ahead, Bert.
No. I say one thing about you that I've always admired is you're not a complacent person at all. Like if something is not happy and not right, like you get to it. And I think in regards to goal setting, that's where a lot of shit doesn't get done. Is people kind of know that they're not exactly 100% happy with their current status, but and they kind of know what they want, and they might even go as far as creating the plan. But in regards to kind of getting on it, most people don't ever take that leap.
Yeah, but I always struggle. I appreciate that. Thanks. And that's true as an athlete, but not in everything, as y'all know too. So some things I'll let go because I'm hyper focused on that all the time. And it's only because I can't deal with it. Like when you say I address it, it's because y'all see me fall apart when something doesn't get addressed, as y'all know. If something feels weird for a week, I'm like, what? 2 weeks? I'm like, okay. And then I'll start crying everywhere. And everyone knows as a group, something's not right with Andrea and it has to be addressed. And it's real embarrassing. But that's how it gets addressed, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So athletically, though, in terms of this, we want to make sure that I think the easiest way to start would be if someone is competing, right? If we want to plan a year, of all the years, the ones that need the most over planning or whatever would be a competitive year for a bodybuilder. So, Jeff, do you think January is a good place to start? Is it too early? Is it too late? What do you think?
For me personally, or in general?
In general, if we're helping someone in their first 5 to 10 years as a competitor.
To start in January?
Yeah, like if someone's planning their year, because they're listening to this. This is the first episode. Yeah, first episode of 2018. Where do you think, like, if you had to take an average of the people on your roster right now, like, where are most people if they're competing in 2018?
Half of them just got done competing this year. So the new ones, I do have new ones starting up.
Okay.
I actually just did. I got a few that are starting in January, actually. But they're in good positions to start, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've been working with them already for a little while through their off season. So we can say we're planning and setting goals, but it's kind of like beyond just a year. It's like sometimes you need a longer. So that's why I don't like that. Oh, it's the new year. Everything happens on January 1st. Like this game plan that some of these people I've been working with started like in the middle of 2017, or actually even the beginning of 2017.
Yeah.
They're setting up a nice off season, and then I'm getting them into position to where they don't have to lose, 30 to 40 pounds. They're like, okay, we have X amount to lose. Start in January. We're going to compete in summer. Get a couple of shows out of the way in summer. Back to the off season. So everything's kind of game planned that way.
Yeah, let's go further into that. I guess go backwards into like what is a good position right now. So, and again, we can't talk about everybody, but if we're talking like generally, let's say the bulk of the shows are in summertime. So let's say 6 months from now, what would be an ideal position? Like, how do we like to get people if we were to like when you say the people that you're starting in January, they've obviously been lifting for a few years, right?
Yeah, they're ready, like physically, like, okay, we've got some muscle.
Yes.
That's been developed.
We're not obese.
Yeah, exactly. They're in an ideal, like, body fat range, good position there. But more importantly, their behaviors are in order as far as, like, the way they've been eating and their structure and just, like, the routines and all that, that's established.
Yeah.
Because now it's like you have all that experience heading in. You don't have, like, the start of January, it's not like you get someone green. They have no idea how to track food, no idea how to go through a structured training program. It's all new territory. So now you have that to contend with, but also now you have the rigors of being in a deficit to try to learn all this stuff while you're dieting.
Yeah.
That I think can be overwhelming for some people.
Yeah, and it's not like we've never done that. Like we've taken new people, but it's just like if we're talking,
it's more of a challenge. Yeah.
Not
that it can't be done, but it's definitely more of a challenge. And I would say, in general, the success rate's higher if you already have, like, that established ahead of time.
Yeah. And then, Bert, are there other things that would help? I guess if they know you already, if they've been working with you, so there's not a relationship to build, right?
That helps. Yeah.
What else you got, Bert?
I think to start, kudos to you if you've committed to a season. I think we all know people who they've been lifting long enough and they've kind of sort of been living the lifestyle to the point where they're like, I'm going to compete one day, or I'm going to compete this year. And maybe they do start a prep for like 4 weeks and then something happens and they have to bail out. Yeah. So I think kudos to you, first of all, if you're like, all right, I'm jumping in. And you've done some research, obviously, in regards to like what the process looks like the pros and the cons, and you have all that stuff sorted out. And then you jump on it and like you actually start a prep. And I think the next big step is to actually have it's not a must, but I think when people outsource the decision making to some extent, they get a coach. think that's a huge step as well, especially when you go out of your way and you it's not some dude usually how it goes with local coaches. If they work in gyms, they hound someone and they're like, hey, I'll get you and you look marvelous and your life will be great. But, they go online, they have a few coaches they're looking at and finally they decide and they I think that's a huge step, when you finally bring someone in on board to help you get there. So I think, again, kind of getting started, that's a big one. And I think there's a difference between I think I'm going to compete this year versus I got my plan, I got my coach, and this is kind of the zone where we're going to most likely aim for. So, I think get those in order, have a plan, a dynamic plan, because you never know, and just get started on it, and just know that it's going to be really fucking hard, like anything else. Right? Yeah. A goal is like when you think of the fruits of your labor, that's always super awesome, and just being up there shredded and all the cool Instagram pics you're going to have. But along the way, just know that there's going to be times where you're not going to be super motivated to get that done. But getting started is a huge one, and it's very hard for a lot of people. I think people really underestimate how many folks we know. Because, again, we have friends that kind of do this who are talking about, I'm going to give this competing thing a go, and they never quite jump on it, or they get started, and then they kind of disappear, and they're like, well, life is and that, my hippo. Yeah, so, yeah.
And I think it might be refreshing for some listeners to know, too, that of those people, that not everybody that does commit in January even makes it.
Absolutely.
We definitely have people that have every intention of competing every year, come January, and by April, like you said, life happens, or they thought they could do the deficit and skill learning and all this stuff at the same time, or
but again, it's sometimes even though let's say those people don't make it to this stage, there's probably still a lot of value that they picked up through the process that might better their skill for the next go round, or maybe it gets postponed, because that's happened too. We're hey, let's postpone this till fall. Let's wait a couple more months and pick it back up, and then their skills are a little bit better. Life might be in a better situation. So
I had a couple ladies that went really we got together. Their first season, didn't know these things. We really thought we could learn it all and do it all, and then 3 months before their show, it's what, now we would be in an even better place next January to do this really well. I know that happens to us a lot. So but that's the thing though, right? Is but then by the next January we know each other so well, and we've, like you said, Jeff, there's that off-season plan which often gets overlooked, which we'll talk about later on. But okay, so that's our ideal state, and then. So we now have this person, they trust us, they know how to track their training and nutrition. They
know what they're signing up for,
yes.
Which is huge.
Yeah. And then I'd say some things that we discussed too. We go over broad goals, which everyone's goal is, I want to be really, really full and lean and hard and shredded on stage. And it's okay, well, there's some expectation management, right? Mm-hmm. There's some talks we have to have.
Is the goal appropriate?
Is it realistic? Yeah.
What do you mean by that, Bert? Can you elaborate for peeps?
I remember when Matt Ogus was our most notable athlete, and what people didn't know is that Matt had been lifting since he was 5 or something like that, But he had a very solid base, and he just got to lifting and progressing for a long time, and at some point decided to, peel it all off, and he looked like someone who had been lifting weights for a long time. Mm-hmm. And we were getting all these kiddos that were this is my goal, and anything less than that is failure. And it's fuck, dude, this is...
And they started lifting when they started watching Matt 3 months ago. Yeah.
I actually learned a valuable lesson, because at that time I was working with one of those kiddos that he was talking about, And this is what I learned as a coach is like, I need to make sure I set the expectations right from the get-go and be very firm with it, because this kid thought he was going to look like Matt Ogus in like 12 weeks. And it wasn't happening. And all of a sudden, I was all my fault. And I'm like, okay, wow. I did a terrible job of setting his expectations, because he had these unrealistic expectations that he's going to look like Matt Ogus in like literally 12 weeks.
And yeah.
And he competed, and he didn't look like Matt Ogus. And not too many people look like Matt Ogus.
Not their first time around. No, they don't.
There's guys that are training for 20 years that don't look like Matt Ogus.
Yeah. So, and it's not to say that we like get our athletes in January and we're like, you're not going to look the way you want. And that's, it's not like that. But there's these conversations over time where it's like, okay, maybe it's your first or second time. This is your first time with a coach or with me in particular. This is what you looked like last time. This is what we look like now. We can expect better than last time. And a lot of times too, I think if we've done our job right, if we have someone that is like that, like we're not going to expect the Ogus, we're going to expect the best them. And then by the time they're halfway through that season, we've known each other and talked about the future so well that they're excited for their off season, because they know that next time, like, oh, I've got this now, So I've only been through this once because I haven't been coaching as long as you guys have, but I am so excited about the people that did those first 2 seasons with me that are staying with me in these off season Skypes. Because of what we're going to build over the next, 5-10 years,
Yeah.
But it's getting people to understand, like you said, that maybe we can get there, but this year the goal is this, But that's again, it's over time. It's not like day one, this is what you look like.
Well, that's because we're talking about 2018, but sometimes it's a 2-year. Like we had on the other podcast where it's like, oh, this is a 2 to 3 year process where the first time you compete, now we have this benchmark, whether you're a first timer, okay, your first time, wherever you do, that's your best ever, right? It's your first time.
Yeah.
But it serves as a benchmark moving forward.
Yeah.
So the next time around, whether it's the year later or 2 years later, if you have a longer off season or whatever, you better be better than the first time around. Yeah. That's the expectation, is you want to be better.
Yeah. So that's a good point though, is that we are going to talk about planning our season now, but it's that the point is that we never let go of the far view. We never let go of that long view because you kind of always have to have it there. Especially for someone if they're first time or whatever, right? Because I know you guys have talked about a lot that you'll maybe keep 5 extra pounds on someone because if you took them all the way, they're going to never come back.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Not come back as a client, but psychologically and emotionally, by next year, will they be in a good place to gain if they're so far gone that we pushed them too hard? So that's a good point, Jeff. And so then when you have this person, you're looking at their season, obviously we have training in place or whatever, but is it now a diet periodization, right? Because as we know, training's training. It's not like this was your program and now that you're dieting, we crank volume in either direction or we overhaul the whole thing. That's not what happens. But nutritionally, there is a big difference, right? And so do you want to start talking about how we program that, Bert? Or what things that you look at big picture for a season?
Yeah, you want to lay out the foundation for the plan, but make it very clear that not everything always goes according to plan, and we might have to change things as we go. So that's super important to just kind of give them some idea of what, for some people, this is going to be an unknown path. They have never ventured in this direction, and yeah, you have the training, and ideally they've been working with us via Skypes prior to this, where they check in, say, quarterly or something like that. They have a good idea as to how we do things, what our systems for the most part look like, or it looks like, or their system anyhow. And yeah, we throw out the plan when it comes to the diet. This is where we can expect to have diet breaks. This is I'm losing my train of thought here. This is what can potentially happen, which is a big one, where Like, let's just say, for example, I will like to talk about situations that might come up before they actually come up, just to make them a little bit more aware and feel a bit more in control of the path we are taking. So, so for example, like a big conversation that I had with competitors this year, because just to kind of pre-plan things a little bit, was that when you get into the best shape you've ever been, like on the way out, like nothing's ever going to be as good as that. So right around the point where we were maybe about somewhere around 5 to 10% above our contest weight, estimated contest weight, I will talk to them and be like, you see how thrilled you are about the way you look now? You see how cool you look now? Remember how you felt about this, because, on the way out, this is going to feel fat and like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have these little like benchmarks of what can possibly go wrong during certain segments of the prep. Like their first, like for example, if someone is getting ready for an early spring show, we're kind of dealing with the holidays now, and it's something that we kind of pre-plan and go prior to that. So yeah, I think when I hear the word goal, I think change. Like this is something that's like outside of your baselines. Like for example, like for most of us, brushing our teeth is just something we do. But I remember there was a time where like getting up and going to the gym was like fucking hard. Like there was times where I'm like, I'm here, like I'm playing video games. I had to, and like now it's so second nature. And then like every year, like I add on something that kind of takes me out of that comfort zone. And for a lot of these people, as much as you can explain to them like how gnarly certain parts of a contest prep are, it's you don't really understand until you experience it. But like kind of giving them a preview of what to expect, and I think most of the time you get a better response from them, as opposed to like, because a lot of people just stop pursuing whatever it is that they're pursuing just because it gets fucking hard. That's it. And if you're like, oh, that's right, coach told me that I would think this was going to be fat at some point. Yeah. We talked about this, and I agree that I would power through this. It kind of gives them a little extra oomph to get started in that direction and kind of like blast through that little plateau on the way to their goals. So yeah, outside of the plan, I think those little things that just come from the experience of navigating many different preps over time is something that we supplement the path with.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said a couple things though in that are pretty basic and important though. You were like, there's this estimated goal stage weight, right? Which you may or may not have reference for. If it's your first prep, you're going to look at that number and be like, no way do I have that much fat on me, because everybody thinks that, but you kind of do. So you have that far off imaginary goal. And if you've prepped before, it's a little easier to kind of see. You talked about planning diet breaks. So, and it's not that we tell our clients like this is when you're breaking, but sometimes you can. Like if they say they have a life event on this certain week or whatever, like, so we kind of get the layout. Go ahead, Jeff.
Exactly. Let's say the big picture is like, okay, where's this person need to get to? Like, okay, where's the estimated stage weight? And usually, from experience diet that I have, not to toot my own horn, but I could kind of come pretty damn close. Then I know, okay, here's the stage weight. This is the X number of weeks we got to work with. Okay, where am I going to plan these diet breaks out? Yeah. And, if it's every 8 to 10 weeks, wherever, or every 12 weeks, wherever it's going to land. So I have these little places that I'm putting these things in my mind, but then as we go along, it might change and get altered. But that's kind of how you like, okay, where do we need to get to? What are the steps along the way? Yeah. And like Berto was saying, I like to inform people, like try to be one step ahead. So, okay, I think at this point we're getting this lean. When we get to this weight, we're probably going to start having these leverage shifts in the weight room. Loads are going to probably start getting a little more challenging here. So like to, bring that conversation in there, hey, let's not freak out if your bench press doesn't go up and things like that, just to try to calm people's nerves. Because if we could keep stress levels down, people tend to progress a lot better when their stress levels are lower. Yeah. So there's a lot of anxiety, even with like, people who've prepped before, they still have, those, I get it, at times, the anxiety, it's like we want to try to keep people calm. Yeah. And if you give them awareness, then that's going to help with that.
For sure. And then, like you said, there's this much time, there's this much weight to lose. So therefore, I know that we're probably going to lose a little faster at the beginning. So we need to want to get there quicker, all that.
Yeah.
So it's all that
Yeah,
stuff that we keep like back of mind, and we'll tell the athletes like by this ish date over the next 2 weeks we'd like to see this happen. If it doesn't, we'll go with this, and if it does, great, we'll keep on. But it's like y'all keep mentioning, it's these. Yes, we do big picture, but the art of the coaching is that every week you have to have the speech, right? There is this like little speech every week, and it's always tailored to the situation where that person is, what they need to hear, whether they're on your, background plan or whatever. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, also, it's like I try to have that conversation, especially if I feel like the timeline, maybe the shows they're picking out, it's like, it's kind of going to be iffy. So I'm like, okay, let's make sure we have a backup plan. Let's pick other shows outside of that one just in case we need more time. Because if you try to, like we all know, we've talked about it so much, if we try to rush to the stage, it usually ends up not turning out too great.
Yeah, like how we made it 30 minutes in without talking about, like, you should pick a show. Duh.
Right?
Yeah, so when we say season, there are shows involved in this season. And when we talk about comp time, that means you need to pick a comp. We forgot about that. Yeah, so do you guys find that people, if they're getting this shredded, would like to do multiple shows? Most people. That's what I typically.
I'll let Berto go, but I have thoughts, but I'll let him go.
I would say at least 2.
I feel like it's a 2 or 3 usually is the goal.
I think
in January.
2 bare minimum. You're gonna regret doing. If you do 1, you're gonna be like, I should have done at least 1 more. Like a few weeks later, that's what you're gonna tell yourself. Because the second one, you think your first show was highly enjoyable, or most people do, until they get that second one in, and then they're like, wow, I was like way more cool about it, and I was able to slow things down a little bit. So yeah, I'd say, have at least a few shows picked out, but be flexible with those as well. And if possible, some people don't have that option. Like, try to have them not too far apart, because being stranded in between shows.
Yeah.
I've done that, and yeah.
See, I would rather that.
You would, that was what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna say initially. Was like, let's try to group these shows together if we can.
Yeah. See, I would rather, or not rather, but because I stress bloat. It takes me like by end of peak week, I need like at least another week or 2 to like clean up and be like, oh, this is my life again. Because like I was just saying at the beginning, that's just how my life rolls. Like if shit gets stressed out, like I need downtime to find life and rhythm again. I can't.
Yeah.
But these are things we learned. But go ahead, Jeff. What were you gonna say?
I agree with Berto. Like at least 2, because that first one, I don't care if you've competed as many times as I have. That first one of the season, you're gonna make mistakes. There's like gonna be something you're gonna go, man, I need to fix that. I need to work on that. And also that you get another opportunity to fix those things. But also, like Berto was saying, the second time around, you're more at ease, because you've already got that first experience out of the way, so you kind of know what to expect in the second go around. But as far as like, if you have one, let's say, planned out for June, and especially like in our case, where we qualify for Worlds, it's like, okay, you got to do a show June or July, then you got to go all the way till November.
Yeah,
that's challenging. That's not easy to do. So you definitely want to make sure that you're setting up your year, no doubt. Like, okay, like for my case, the goal is November Worlds. There's steps along the way I got to go through. So there will be that time where I'm going to have that little bit of a downtime.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not going to make it. It's just going to be too hard and too strenuous.
I'm thinking, and I guess when I say far apart, I'm like, preferably for me, I'm like maybe for 3 to 5 weeks would be a good break for me. But yeah, when you said, and I didn't think about a June show versus you guys getting on the pro stage in November would be like absurd.
When I say group them together, that's like what I'm talking about. Like, okay, let's say 2 weeks, 4 weeks later. That's grouping them together. That's ideal. Yeah. Maybe stretch it out to maybe 2 months, maybe. But But yeah, but if it's your first go around, let's say you have a show planned out in June and you're thinking you're going to do it again in November, that's asking a lot of yourself if it's your first go around.
Yeah. Well, and some people just want to know what it's like. Like, I'm trying to think too, like there's been plenty of people that, there's a couple I can think of that I coached this past year that it was, or not, yeah, that it was like, let's see how this sport is. As soon as they got off stage, you're like, okay, now I'm ready for an off season. I really do want to do this. Let's keep going. So you're right. It is preference, but I think having at least 2 in mind is really handy because if we're just not ready for the first one, you can just continue your diet onward. Okay.
Exactly.
So big picture competitor, I decided I want to compete this year. I'm picking a couple shows. From that, we're working backwards with my coach to because it's this long, what's the appropriate stage weight-ish? And therefore, we have an approximate estimation on diet breaks and how a rate of weight loss. And then we know when we're ending it, then there's this recovery period. And then by the time the end of the year, by the end of 2018, we should be and hopefully are in a mental and physical place that's primed for the game train starting next year. Right, because, would y'all agree with that? From January to January, we should be back in a place that is stable and ready to continue this career.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen, and it hasn't happened to me before, but that's what we would like. Go ahead.
You know, that system is you have a Sherpa already, right? You have your guide and your coach. But there's a lot of people who, first of all, I'll hear this often. Some folks will not get a coach because they're like, I want to learn a lot and try this on by myself. And I'm like, you never learn a lot. You learn much less, and you're just a frantic mess. I think that's one thing a good coach does is along the way, there's an educational component to the coaching.
Yeah.
So you will not learn more. You will learn less. No. You will be a mess, and then you'll probably DM me over Instagram the week before your show telling me, so how do I peak for this baby, right?
Yeah.
I'd say research the certain things like the peak weeks, the diet breaks. Have that laid out if you're going about it on your own. Don't message someone 8 different people about talking about the peak week and then go with the peak week you like the best. So have that set up, and then have the exit plan set up. I think that's super important as well. We talk about diet breaks. How are you going to give your body the extended break post show to kind of get things better? Have all that laid out in advance, I'd say, especially, or at least find a way to justify why it is that you're going to go about it this way or that way, if you're doing it on your own.
This is one of the few things that I don't think you should. This is a very strong opinion. I don't think anyone should try to do this by themselves. I think there's too much bad shit that can happen. It's not a pickup game of basketball. I just think people who have not competed in bodybuilding will forever underestimate it. Just forever, you have no idea what it is. You have no idea what it's like to be starving all the time. And you have no idea what it's like to lose your shit. And especially, not just and this kind of person who's done it by themselves, I get it, I have done it by myself, I did. But more importantly than by myself, as in, I didn't even internet know anybody. It was bad. It was bad.
Well, I think I could one-up you guys on that.
Yeah.
I've done this by myself many, many times without internet. And I didn't get shit right until I actually met the other gentleman on our team. So
it's not impossible. It's just
think
why?
Yeah. I've been doing it for so long and I still couldn't get it right. It took a long while to figure shit out on my own. And it wasn't until I actually got help where I started putting pieces together. Yeah. So to me, it's you can save yourself a lot of heartache if you hire someone who's credible. And not someone who just cares about getting you shredded, but actually taking you through the process to where they're thinking about your well-being first and foremost.
Yeah.
And they're thinking about, what's going to happen after the show's over? How am I going to get this person? This person needs to care about you after you're done competing, what you're going to be like in 6 months post-show. Because how many times have you seen people lose their shit? It's not during the prep they're losing their shit. It's after.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it's a good idea to get a coach,
Yeah.
a good one.
Yeah. Not an online program. It's not the same thing. It's just not the same thing. Okay, that was a rant, but
That
it's
was
an
a
important
rant.
one. But it's
Yeah, I
important,
started
dude.
getting mad. Huh? Was
I
I
know, it's
mad?
okay.
No, I was.
You can join me in my recliner of rage here because everyone leaves me stranded all the time in my rage.
No, I got you on this one.
I know. It's just, it can be so bad. That's all. It can be if and then there's like the whole money argument, which I'm sure like I can't afford a coach. But to be honest, again, my strong opinion, if you won't afford your show and your suit and your tan and your whatever, like if you're not in a position, my opinion, y'all can get rageful or whatever. If you're not in a position to afford a good coach, which there are some that are priced outrageously expensive, I get it, but there's some good modest ones, and if you can't do that in an ongoing place, then you're not probably in a place where you should be competing right now because the sport costs money. So you'll either find a way to pay for it because it's that important and you need the coach because it's the safe way, or you're okay if you decide not to get a coach because money. Just understand that it's, but all the food, the gym membership, especially if you're a girl, your suit's going to be like hundreds of dollars. If you're a dude, it might be like $50. But the shows, the travel, the tan, it's an expensive sport.
True, but it's just the value of the coach is not just getting you in shape.
Right.
You're getting educated.
Yeah.
So that's how that's how I kind of see it. If you're getting in shape, but you're also being educated.
Yeah.
And if you go through an entire prep, which for some people could be, in some cases it's close to a year. You figure the off season and then the show itself, you're looking at, let's say, a year. It's a year, but in a year's time, you might be educated enough to where, hey, I got this. I'm on my own now. So you spent 1 year out of I've been training 32 years now. 1 year out of 32, you spent X amount of money for 1 year. That's going to pay off for a lifetime.
Yeah. Well, and also, financial stress is a big stress, and it does not make prep easy either. Because I've done that too. Tried to prep where like all my money was like just so that I could make it to the stage, and that's not.
That should be part of your goal setting, part of the plan when you're writing things out for the year.
Yeah, good point. How do I allot the appropriate amount of money for this thing?
Because it is expensive, like you said, it is expensive to compete.
Yeah.
Man,
good rants, y'all. Good rants. Okay.
That was all you guys. I was nice.
It's the water.
It's the water. Jeff, never mind. Man, if they're just listening, they didn't get to see that, and I'm not going to talk about it because I'm not going there. I'm not doing that on this podcast.
Really? All right. Let's go.
Okay, so I forgot where we were before I got all ranty.
The outline of the year.
Outline of the year, yes. Recovery, period, needs to be planned before. And if you're coaching yourself, I would write it before you diet. Like, write it on paper. Because when you're hungry, you don't write things the way you would if you weren't hungry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. I think people sometimes underestimate the amount of... You're not crazy. You're just frantic. You're starving, really. And it messes with your brain and your decisions and your everything. Go ahead.
If there is one way to kind of sell it to people, is I think anyone who's thinking about competing, they love what they do. They enjoy the training. Yeah. They enjoy the high protein eatings. And with things that we love, we tend to sometimes let emotions play too big of a role with our decision making. Like people have a hard time getting their off season right when it's like just the off season, And not to say it's just the off season, but there's just so much more room for error, and things are pretty straightforward when you think about it. Like if you have a hard time with your off season and getting that right, like a prep is going to be like that times 10. It's so hard to describe until you're like 8 weeks out from your show, and even people who are like on time and ready, like they lose their crap. It's like you look great, you can be ready in 2 weeks. They still don't feel ready, and they still are very prone to doing things without the aid of their muscle Sherpa. So
That's all sure.
So yeah. I'd say that's just something to make note of. If you're like, shoot, like I've just ran 531, and then I ran fat, and then I did a Chico program, and then I did the West Side Bar. It's like, fuck, you've done this in 4 months. Prep is gonna be pretty fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Just it's totally.
Yeah, it's bonkers. In the recovery phase, which I think we've beat to death in the past 2 years, as we should. But we'll say that there's, 6 to 8 weeks. If you want to be real nice to yourself, okay, a couple months. We'll say maybe 3.
Yeah.
And that's more so, if you did it right, that'd be more psychological need than physical. And then that leaves us in pumpkin spice time, right? That leaves us like September, October. And then holidays, we should be ready to enjoy time with our family without freaking out, hopefully. Planning the next exciting off season, shit like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how a competitive year, in theory, if you're not crazy and did it in a smart way. And when I say not crazy, like I've been the crazy, and I'm sure I will be next time. But that's if life doesn't throw any giant curveballs. So that's like the general template if everything was magical and unicorns. So like
If you got off stage in July, August, let's just say, right? You had 2.5, 3 months until you're like, okay, that happened. I'm over it. I'm cured. And you're kind of in this realm now at this point.
Yeah. So we should be excited to train, excited to see our family.
Oh, yeah.
What else? Not taking selfies every morning.
That's a huge one. I've actually, that's one thing that's been a part of the recovery diet. It's like you're not allowed to look at yourself anymore unless, say, you're at the gym and you have a pump. But outside of that, don't go like to the bathroom and like flex an ab or do this or do that. It's like, forget about it. You are you need to separate yourself from that, because maybe that behavior was almost perhaps even appropriate at a certain point, because there's certain details like, oh, I look best after this many days after my carb up, I look best after I eat this, that sort of stuff. So it's perhaps it's appropriate within the context of a prep, right? But at this point, like, you should be like more so focusing on, because you're not going to see like growth on yourself at that point. Like, you're going to have to shift your focus to like the gains that are taking place in the weight room, and they should be for the most part at this point. You should start to see things liven up, I'd say, right about now.
Yeah. And pumpkin spice. You get all the good foods.
Patty LaBelle.
It's low fat. Okay. So I think that's a good segue into if that happened, either that happened or I'm off season in general. So let's assume that you're not in your recovery phase anymore. I'm like, either I just like the lifts and I want to improve my body over the next many decades because I love the gym, or I am a bodybuilder. I'm not competing for at least 2 years, let's say. Does it even matter? Should I just eat and grow all year? And if so, is there a way that needs to be periodized? Should I look at it on that big of a scale? Who wants to start on this one? Which one of you two? Jeff's closing his mouth. No, wait.
Go ahead, Bert.
Bert, go ahead. What do you think is a good way to look at my year ahead?
I think you should plan some things kind of in the same manner, simply because I think the off season is a good time to develop a lot of those habits that are going to be useful during your contest prep, and I think planning is a huge one. So you should have say like weight ranges that you want to be at. Say it's January, and like, for example, someone just got off the stage this year around August. They're kind of in pumpkin spice mode right now. They're cured. They feel better. And 2018 for them is a growing year. I'd say definitely now that you're most objective, I'd say set up a plan and again, like, plans are subject to change, of course, but like, set up a plan, and both on the training front, and I think especially on the gaining and cutting side of things, because everyone who is into the body recomp thing is like, for the most part, you're either going to be gaining or you're going to be cutting, and it's going to be a back and forth. Like, try to set that up. That's, I think, a huge one, because it's really easy to, once everyone starts getting their shred on, and there's more and more like shirtless selfies on the Instagram, to like kind of feel left out. And I think if you were to take a poll of most people who are doing the off season that are gaining, if you were to ask them what side are they on, are you on the side that you have a hard time gaining, and if anything you wish you could gain a bit easier, or are you on the other side where you wish you could keep it a bit tighter and you're not always exactly happy with the way you look in your off season? I think that's why when you're, I guess, starting a gaining phase, or you're planning that out, like, don't let yourself turn back until you get to a certain point. So, for example, if you're starting a gaining phase in January, tell yourself, I'm going to commit to gaining from now until July. And this is more or less the weight range I'm going to be at. And set up some things that are not necessarily negotiable, especially if you're very prone to having this specific thing freak you out, and you've gotten in your own way because of this and that in the past. And I think most people kind of know, especially when it comes to the gaining phase, where they kind of tend to get in their own way. And usually it's bailing out because they just don't feel pretty anymore at a certain point.
Yeah. I like to map that out a little bit for my athletes. Like, I'll say, okay, like Berto was saying, here we're going to get, this is what our weight's going to look like probably in the next 8 to 10 weeks. And so whether we're maybe slowly walking food up and trying to keep our body weight at that point or get to that point, then it's like, okay, let's reevaluate that. Okay, let's see how we're looking now. Let's see what's your training doing and all that. And if, things are, checking off really well, then we might want to set up the next little stage weight. So usually I won't go any further than, let's say, 3 months, because it's too hard to predict what you're going to look like 6 months down the road if you're gaining for 6 months straight. So I like to just put these little markers in and just reassess, and then create another benchmark, 2 to 3 months down the road.
Yeah, I like that.
But I really like to, like, if we're in a gaining phase, I don't want to be spending half of my year trying to clean people up, because that gaining phase wasn't mapped out. And they're just like, if someone has a tendency of eating too much, then they're going to shoot themselves in the foot really early. And then the insecurities creep up. And like Berto was saying, like, they want to diet down. And then there's other people on the other side of the track that you might have to force feed a little bit because they just have a hard time gaining. So, but I like to put those markers in. I think that's important to have some type of guidance and plan when you're not hyper focused on a show, because a lot of times when we're off seasons, we can get a little complacent because the next goal, like that next hyper focused goal, is so far away.
Yeah, I like what y'all said though, and it is that you keep talking about these different people and the different problems they have, but I think that's important when the problems, some of those we said are physical and some of them are psychological, and to be honest, I think most of them are psychological in this sport. So it's like, if my goal at the end of the year is like, yeah, I want to be more jacked by the end, and maybe if I'm a girl that's like 3 to 7 pounds more than I started, maybe, or if I'm a newish girl, or maybe that's maintained or whatever. And if I'm a dude, maybe that's, I don't know, 8 to 12, but like tight, whatever it is, right? So yeah, there's just like dream body at the end of the year, but maybe, like you said, Jeff, those 2 to 3 months ranges are always with to eliminate the bad. So if they do tend to get too sloppy.
Exactly. It kind of it does two things. One, you're still progressing, right? Because even if you're gaining slow, you're still going to probably progress in the weight room. You're going to feel better and better. Yeah. But it also keeps things in check, so you don't get to a place where people get unhappy with how they're looking per se. Mm-hmm. And if they do start to get, let's say, a little on the softer side, well, you didn't go too far off the scale. You're like, okay, all I have to do now is just either like maintain this person right where we're at now, or if it's maybe they're a little too insecure about it. Okay, let me just shave a little bit of food off, and okay, a week or two later, they're looking better, and they're like, okay, I could deal with this.
Yeah. Because a lot of
So
times.
that's why.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I would say that's why I like to set up. Like, I don't like to go more outside of the 2 or 3 month range, because it's way too hard to predict what someone's going to look like 6 months from now.
Well, a lot of times those are like behavioral things. Like for example, we just got out of recovery phase with there's this certain athlete I'm thinking about, and then the next goal is, okay, now we're gonna maintain-ish this body weight plus or minus a couple pounds this month, but I want you to just count calories and only weigh in 3 days a week. Okay, next month or whatever, it's like this body weight range, but now only weigh in twice a week and just make sure that your body weight is in this range, but you don't have to really track, So there's like these, because at the end of the year, you don't want, like we keep saying, like maybe you got too sloppy or maybe you have to push the gaining weight. But I think an important thing if you're in the off season is, did you spend the whole year weighing in every morning, tracking every macro, not able to go out with your friends? Like yeah, we have these physique goals, but at the same time, if you have no willpower left at the end of the year, or you didn't live life by the end of the year, like then that's part of setting yourself up for the next comp season, is that you had some emotional rest and some psychological rest, and you're doing good in your job, and you're passing your classes, and you know what I mean?
I think what I like to do, and actually this is something Alberto did with me during my prep we worked together a little bit, is like we have there's structure. I like to give structure.
Yeah.
But depending on what phase we're in, then it's like, okay, I'll give you flexibility within that structure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what we're talking about. Like, okay, recovery diet, there's a structure set up, right? We have that structure. But then as we get deeper in the off season, I let the reins off a little bit and give them more leeway. So I set the structure up a little bit differently so it's more flexible, so it does adjust to, where they need to be on the behavior side of things.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the people too where, like, it took me a long time to learn how to not gain or lose. Like Bert, you're very good and intentional about it, and very objective about, like, I'm going to gain weight till I get to here, and then I'm going to lose weight till I get to here, and then I'm going to whatever. And, like, cutting's always easy in my brain. Gaining was never. And so, like, I just hated the off season, right? And I know that, like, if it's okay to talk about, like, with Leanna, her goal right now is to maintain, right? And for a lot of people, that's a skill that is that needs some emphasis.
Yeah. Being able to be in that standstill position. Like a lot of people will see, especially the hyper-focused bodybuilders, are like, well, you're not really doing anything. But it's a valuable skill to have. It definitely comes in handy to just kind of not sink, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's not like we're not saying either that a recomp is impossible. Like again, I'm a good example. My same body weight 2 years ago is very different than it is now. But that doesn't mean that it was like poorly planned, or that, I don't know. I think something maybe what we've illustrated, if nothing, in the last 10 minutes is like planning your off season doesn't really go by time so much more as like, what do you need right now? Like, obviously, if you're competing, there are timelines, and we can actually say this is when this happens. But if I'm off season and maybe I don't know how to stop dieting, or I can't stop eating or I can't stop weighing myself because I'm so terrified, or I can't stop screwing on my commitments because all I care about is bodybuilding. Like, there's just so many things.
These are all like, these are not. This is all the emotional, crazy stuff that happens with the stuff we love, and that's why it's important to plan ahead, though, because if you plan ahead, you're most objective. Like, for example, one goal that I have is, because I have some crazy strength goals that I'm not even comfortable about talking about yet. Not until I'm like close enough. I'm like, just planning this. And
we'll say, prove it, whatever. Yeah, right.
I'm gonna film a video and like,
Okay.
just put it somewhere else. But I know that I want to get up to about 195 because when I get to 195, I'm like ridiculously strong. Like,
And for listeners, when Berto told us that when we were at dinner, we were like, "No, you're not." We were all sitting around a Magnolia eating pancakes, and we were like, "No, you're not going to get that big, Bert."
I will get that huge, and it's gonna be huge, like especially because I'm pseudo 5'9", mostly head.
The top one. Don't get excited.
My shoulder like 5'6", but
That's true. We're the same height, but my shoulder, I'm like 2 or 3 inches taller on his shoulders.
it's all
He makes up for his head.
Berto, you're like a brontosaurus. This is good. Berto's a brontosaurus. Oh my God! Can someone please make a meme of this?
God,
You can do it for yourself.
No, yeah,
You're good at the memes.
It makes me feel better about my stage weight. It's like I'm not really 5'9". I'm technically, if I had a normal size head, I'd be 5'6". So, but no, I've set this out and I planned this out ahead of time so that when I get there and I'm like, but it's like, no, you said this when it made the most sense, and you're going to stick to the plan. And it's funny, I was having this conversation with Leanna about like my Skypes. And it was about like when it's gotten to the point that when I get an application, like I kind of know who I'm dealing with just by reading the application.
It's crazy.
And I can kind of tell you the picture's gonna look like. And this is one thing that like really jacked people have in common. Like I can tell is first of all, they have a high protein diet all the time. And it's not because it's a high protein diet. It's because if you have a high protein diet with all these meals, it means that you have a system and that you're disciplined and that you're consistent. Mm-hmm. So that's the one thing. And then with their training, it seems like it's been very established and unchanged for a long time.
Yeah.
And you look at the picture and it's Evan Godby.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, oh wow, you eat consistently, you have a plan. Maybe your training plan isn't the best thing in the world, but it's been consistent and you try to progress within like what's working in this plan. And the people who are the exact opposite are the people that have like since 2016, they've like bulked and cut like 9 times. And they've tried these 5 different programs. Those are the people that get nowhere. So I think even if you're like not 100% sure about your gaining plan, your off-season plan, I think just having something that you wrote out when you're most objective and committing to it for an extended period of time, you're going to get way better results than the way most people do it. And that's just like, I'm just simply not dieting right now. And that's all it is. That's how you don't off-season.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's important to plan.
You got heated. Bert got heated there for a second.
He did.
He was talking real fast for you, anyways.
Gaming's where it's at. People don't. Not until you do it, you're like, shit. This is where it's at. This is the actual building part.
Yeah, that's a good point though. I was just talking to Brandon about that too the other day, and I was like, you're just like, because he's one of the few people that I'm like, okay, I've seen you in bodybuilding for your first 5 years, and you look completely different, and he gives almost 0 fucks. But it was just like, when he's in season, he's in season. When he's off. Like he doesn't have all those problems that I was noting off that like me and freaking 90% of us do. He's like, okay, I'm done. And then he eats, and then he looks in the mirror one day and he's like, I feel a little fluffy. I'm gonna mini cut. And 8 weeks later, he did it. And then he stops tracking again. Like he basically does what you do, Bert, but I think you even, for the people, you track it pretty damn good and talk about it a lot. But you're right. That's all it. It's all it takes.
I wrote him this blog post, his post contest, and it was one of those things where I'm like, it's simple, it's appropriate. You can go run off with this for a while. And then I talked to him at some point, and it was like a long time after, and he was still running it. And I'm like, dude, that's why you make games, because
he clears it out. Like he saves it, and then he deletes everything, and then he just goes, and then clears it out, and then he just eats mostly like a 12-year-old, and
pretty cool. And there's a system. Like it's hard to understand it sometimes, but there's a system in place, and he's consistent, and that's basically it.
And like Jeff, there's like no real but I have these weight training goals, and like I'm gonna PR. Like I don't remember him ever saying, I don't know what his PRs are. He just when he can do more, whatever day he just does more. Like, it's so chill, and I admire that. But I know that's not most of our athletes. That's not me. That's not most of us who super are like into this sport. But it's almost like the more chill you can be about it, like you said, it almost sounds boring, but that's when it works out. It's when you try to make it exciting that it always like.
Well, I kind of like the way I think about my style. It's almost like, I don't know if people know basketball. They know who Tim Duncan is. And Alberto might know. Basically, he was a power forward, very, very, very boring to watch. Like bank shots and just very boring player to watch, but so fundamentally sound. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I like to do things when I'm training. It's like let me stick to the fundamentals. Let me not get too fancy and too cute, and just pound it. And it's like Berto's saying, I stick to structures pretty well.
Yeah. But
nowadays for me, it's structured as like, having flexibility within the structure, but I still have my structure, big picture structure, and I stick to it. Yeah. And I don't venture off too frequently.
Yeah. So that said, right, we haven't told anybody like anything. I mean, it's all important, but we haven't been like, and you should do this. But I think maybe if we could summarize it, it would be like, have an end goal, just like we did the first time, right? Have an end goal and then work backwards. Like if your end goal is you want to weigh the same, that's okay. If it is, I need to tighten it up over the year, but make sure I'm still getting stronger, which by tightening it up means like go from 25% to like 20% body fat or something because you were too big or whatever. That doesn't mean diet the whole time, but there's a lot of things that can go, like the middle of the year can be very different with the beginning and end goals the same. And like it's almost like the middle of the year is like, how do you do this in a way that you enjoy, that doesn't put you in any backward steps, right?
So we're talking somebody who's not competing, right? We're talking off season, and maybe someone who just wants to recomp a little bit, right?
Sure. Let's say either they shouldn't be wanting to lose or gain more than 5 to 10 pounds. So they don't need any big change.
Yeah, a lot of people, summer, I want to look better. Like, you would get that a lot, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's like, okay, the first 3 or 4 months you're slowly gaining. Maybe you shaving, April, May, you diet a little bit to look good for summer. You maintain during summer. You're eating enough to support your training. You're kind of maintaining that look. Once you get into like the end of August, okay, we're back to gaining again. So that might look like, yeah. So you're only spending 2 months out of your year really kind of dieting, which is not a bad ratio.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Being that you're lean enough to just only diet for a couple of months and you're looking like beach ready where you want to be.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so that's an option. We give Brandon as an example. Just for the record, he only mini cuts like once a year, and it is when he like looks in the mirror and is like, "Let's do it now." But he didn't spend too much of his time. And then Bert, you have approximate body weights that you like to touch upward and downward, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my cap. I don't know when it's going to happen. I can kind of tell you, but it's probably going to be somewhere around July to October. It's probably when I'll see my my first mini cut, unless training's going super well. I'll just keep going with it. But I expect to be about 185 when I think it's to do that, and then I'll probably lose maybe about 7, and then restart the process again. I don't want to get too far away from those leverages. When I get to 185, it's things are going to feel good, but I'm not going to be as hungry. And I'm going to need some proof that what I'm doing is working. And sometimes just removing that bit helps. But I think kind of the challenge that you brought up, you're not going to be 195. And that's definitely something that I'm going to have to coach myself through. And that you said you would. You want to see what happens. So I think you should commit to it. And I think I will be having that talk with myself when I'm like, shoot, I'm a few 190s.
I just want to say for the record, so it's somewhere we can look back on. I told him to get to like 190, 195 a few years back, if you recall. Remember? And you're like, oh, no, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that.
I feel like that's you were heavy. 190 when I moved there. 2013?
I saw a few 190s, but that was it. I couldn't hold it like for more than 2 days. Yeah.
Okay. For the record,
But
Jeff said.
his 190, 195 is still going to look good. It's not going to be like sloppy. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't want people, to think like, okay,
No.
his 195. That means, okay, hey, Berto's getting 195, so I'm going to get to 185, 190.
Yeah.
He's going to
Well,
hold it a
and
little bit different than most people.
yeah, and what about? Because I feel like we leave him out a lot. Not hashtag girl power, but I'm just saying like gaining was always terrifying to me, and like now, again to bring it up a bajillion times, like I know I've put on a lot of muscle in the last couple of years, but I never had the goal of gaining weight. And like you said, Leanna's goal right now is to maintain body weight. So like, what would be if, say, in my first 1 to 5 years of competing, and I'm a female, and I'm healthy, but I don't want to get any bigger, and I still want to look good. Like, what does a good end year goal look like? Like, I don't want to do what Berto did and gain 10 pounds because I don't feel like a girl anymore. You know what I mean? So how, I guess it's like not everybody wants to gain and cut,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so is that bad, right? Like you said, there's some elitists that are like, well, if you're not gaining weight, you're not gaining muscle, which we know is not entirely true. But how would I plan a year if my goal is not to gain weight?
And I have no evidence other than what I have seen. I don't think it's something that you can really even find research on. But I think people who've been working with physique athletes long enough and they're observant, they will tell you that there's a few scenarios when people think about like recomping, where it does happen. And I guess in review, it's like if you're doing drugs, obviously, if you're like a beginner, right? And then if you're making a comeback, like you stop training for a minute and you're going to get back into shape, you can kind of do both at the same time. But the other time where I've kind of seen that is when people hang out at, I guess, almost like the higher end of their body fat.
Yeah.
And their work capacity is like, because at this point they're pretty well trained because they're well fed, they have leverages on their side. Something has to give, and I've seen this like with yourself. I've seen it with Eric. This last time I seen him, like he was heavier than he has been in a while, but things have kind of reshifted, even though the weight hasn't necessarily moved. So I think there is some merit to, especially our female listeners, to kind of hang out maybe at that higher end of your athletic set point, and just progress there for a minute. And again, like I've seen this with certain physique athletes where I see it very frequently is with a lot of strength athletes, especially women who kind of hang around a certain body weight where they're like the most like strong. And you would just kind of see it's like, oh, like what's her name? Kirsten Dunsmore. She's kind of hung around the same body weight for a while now, but like every year she just gets a little bit more jacked, and it's because most of the year she doesn't spend it dieting because she has to compete and perform. So I'd say, there's some body recomp potential if you just train with enough body fat on you, which doesn't get fat, and with enough food, and just like give it some like give it a few tries where or try to fight off a few of those moments where you would have pressed that like fat loss button but you didn't. Like do that a few times, and you'll be very glad that you did. And I think a lot of the things that women are looking for in regards to body recomp that they want to induce via fat loss, like it's like, guess what? You can find it the other way around. You just haven't tried it yet.
So it'd probably be like planning that person's year out would be more planning around the weight room versus what the body weight's going to look like.
And like Bert said, if it's like if there's, and you talked about it too, Jeff, you're like there's this point where people are miserable and they hate the way they look. So you don't want them there, but it's like maybe you could, like if this female in the case, like maybe you don't look as perfect as you once looked on stage or even as good as you think you should look right now, but like you're comfortable at least walking around, you're not embarrassed of yourself, like okay. Because I think that's where I was like at this same body weight 2 years ago, I was like, I mean, it'll work, like I guess. Like I wasn't real stoked about it. I didn't feel like I looked like I lifted. But but my athletic goals were such that I was like, but I feel real good. So, and then literally it'd be like every 6 months I'd look at like some random Instagram video of me training because I put those up all the time, and I'd be like, damn, my legs look a little bigger, and then like 3-4 months later, also not really paying attention to body weight, I was like, fuck, I got more stretch marks on my thighs, but my legs are getting bigger. And then like I would do a deadlift and I'm like, oh shit, there's delts there. But it was like I just had to stop paying attention to it. And I think I put up on Instagram too, like my weigh-ins. I weigh in like once every 4 to 12 weeks right now because I just kind of know. And I can tell because I have such high intensity cardio that like if I'm doing rope climbs, I'm like, all right, so you had burgers last night. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you guys were here, I felt a little heavier, but it's because we're eating out every night and like whatever. And then by the time y'all leave a week later, I feel normal again. And so it took me like, I guess, having to learn that and not rely on the scale.
But you see, you bought in.
Yeah.
You finally gave in and bought into it. And then as you progressed, then it was like, okay, now I'm seeing results. So you got more secure with it.
Yeah.
So it's getting that person to say, okay, let me not focus on the aesthetics and let's buy into the actual training.
Yeah.
Because once your training starts going up, this is regardless if you're man or woman, you're going to see the results of it if you're committed to it and you're eating enough to support it.
Yeah. Agreed. But it's not easy, man. Like I'm so happy I can talk about it now because literally it was like a 4 or 5 year battle to get on the other side of like, I know there's people that like live a normal life and don't hate the way they look. I know it. And I have clients that say that. They're like, why can't I just not be OCD and still like kind of look okay? And it's like, you can, it just might not be now yet.
That's a hard sell.
Yeah, it sucks, man.
Because I think often we talk big picture a lot. And I think that's, to me, like whenever the big picture is in order, that's where people find the most success. It just takes longer to get there. It's like anything in life. You're not going to get it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But everybody wants it tomorrow. So they can't identify the big picture. And once you have that in order, then you put the details together to get there. And it just takes time.
Yeah.
But when people start selling out to their emotions, they go for short-term gratification. 6 months later, they're like, oh shit, I'm leaner, but I still don't have no muscle, or a year later, they're still looking the same.
Yeah. Or they're forever like a prison to, what do you call it, Bert? Macro jail?
Macro jail, yeah.
Macro prison. Like they're still, you know what I mean? Like because you don't, not that we think it's bad to track year round, but like if you have to, is not a good place to be in going, like it's not a good place to be. Like if I want to compete this January, if I've been tracking for 3 years straight because I don't know how to live life without it, that prep's going to be a lot harder. Like you've been using willpower every single day, but you have no idea what hunger feels like or fullness or like you're just kind of so. Again, something else that was like a side effect is I developed that radar of like I don't have to weigh in and I know when I'm heavy and light, so no one has to tell me. I don't have to wake up every morning with the fear. You know what's something I used to do too, and I didn't realize I did it until I stopped doing it, is I used to try to eat dinner earlier so I could weigh in lighter the next day. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I had an early dinner, I'm kind of hungry, but if I wait, then I'll hit a new low tomorrow. And it's like, that's fucking stupid. I couldn't, like, that's a P. It's just so dumb. But, it took a long time, and it's not like I'm not educated. It's not like I didn't have a good coach. It's just hard. Like, this shit just takes time.
Yeah. This whole, like, goal setting and getting goals accomplished, like, so much of it, it just revolves around, like, leaving your comfort zone. Whether it be, like, extending your gaining phase for another 2 months, finally being able to, commit to that prep. You always feel like you're a little behind and you just abort it last minute because, you're behind or you just feel small or something like that. I think, like anything that I've done that's like been worth it, it definitely involved like getting out of bed and, being like, fuck, all right, you said you're going to do this, so let's do this. And I always remember that, especially when it comes to goals like outside of bodybuilding, because that stuff, not that I have it mastered, but a lot of it is easier than it was at some point. And whenever I do something that's like outside of the bodybuilding realm, like I have to remember that. It's like, you said you would you said you would clean up that garage or clean up this or that. Like you were going to get the lawn in order this year, that sort of stuff. It's what book is it? The Whole Resistance, right? I think.
Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah.
War of Art.
Yeah. I read that thing.
Good for you.
But it was, it's
like 100 pages,
Resistance.
but I'm proud of you. It's like the smallest book.
It was 2 days though.
Still proud of you.
Yeah. No, like the whole, I think that's a huge part, like when it comes to bodybuilding, like, resisting, like, tracking your macros when you said you wouldn't, and that you have some certain baseline skill where you can do that, or that you're not going to freak out if you see this huge weigh-in because you told yourself that.
That's a big part of it. I remember having those talks with myself. It was like 2014-ish though, when it's like, okay, you're on YouTube, you have to be an example. You know that a good off-season bodybuilder isn't this crazy. So don't be this crazy. Like, it was those things where but in prep, it was like easy. I can live this life and you'll check me out. And like outside, it's like, you can't be crazy. You can't be crazy. I was like, I was inside crazy, but I was like, don't do stupid things because you shouldn't, because you shouldn't, because you know how the body works, and because Berto said, and because like all these things that again, where off season was so easy to talk about when I was in season, but once I was in it was just like, yes, that's a good point. All right, did we answer that? Like, what would an off season person do? Make a goal that's appropriate for you. And there's a lot of ways to do the middle part.
Yeah,
a lot of ways to do it without while still staying on that course. So it's like, did we do it?
No, I think honestly, again, like it goes back to that Skype app. Like, I know who's been doing pretty well. It's because, like, shoot, they stick to things. Like, and that's huge. That is tremendous.
And that even if it's not the hashtag optimal thing, it was a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
They weren't born eating like 5 protein meals a day. Like, that wasn't how they were raised. They at some point modified their behavior and they got it to that point. And I think that's super key. Committing to what you said you were going to do but again, like, it needs to be a good plan too. So like, do research, set some time up to really work on it, double check again, and then just kind of get to work and try not to stop and like analyze everything too much.
Yeah,
especially if it really.
And I like what Jeff said about, like, you break into the 2 to 3 months. So you don't touch anything and you don't make any decisions until you get to the 2 or 3 months. Because I was always guilty of that. I'm like, for the next 6 months, and like month 1.5, I'm like, ooh, but what if? And it's like, just fighting the wants to change. Yeah.
This is like, big picture. Set your goals, commit to it, put your check marks in place, and get after it.
Yeah. Okay, I think we should end it there. That was good, Jeff.
Hey everybody, it's Eric Helms. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. As you know, at 3DMJ, we promote evidence-based approaches to the lifting community. If that's something you want to dive deeper into, I'd encourage you to check out my research review, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport, or for short, MASS. This is a review that myself, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Greg Knuckles put out every month. We cover the latest research publications that are applicable to strength and physique athletes, or anyone who's looking to get stronger or improve their body comp. Our content is in both written and video format. For more information on how to subscribe, check out 3dmusclejourney.com/mass. That's 3dmusclejourney.com/MASS for further details. Thanks for tuning in.